Welcome to Shorr Solutions, the podcast, and I'm your host, Jay Shorr, CEO and founder of Shorr Solutions. We are a team of national and award-winning practice management consultants with experience running a multi-million-dollar cosmetic dermatology and plastic surgery practice. We're here to share strategies and insights that will help you grow your practice efficiently and profitably. In each episode, we'll explore the steps and actionable insights to guide you through your journey to increase efficiency, boost revenue, and decrease costs. Tune in and discover how to improve your patient experience and take your aesthetic practice to the next level. Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of Shorr Solutions, the podcast, and I'm your host, Jay Shorr. Today, we're going to speak episode number 129, The Power of People and What Practice Managers Wish You Knew. And I have a special guest on today, Erica Vega, who is the practice manager of Rana Facial Plastic Surgery, a very, very well-known client of ours in Frisco, Texas, which is in North Dallas, Texas. So let's get started. Welcome, Erica, and thank you for being a guest today on our program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored to be here. I really appreciate it.
Well, great. Erica, you and I have known each other for quite a long time yet, just a little bit after Dr. Rana opened up his practice, and now it's been a couple of years. Let me ask you a question. I know your history, I know your background, but why don't you tell the audience what led you to become a practice manager in plastic surgery?
Sure. So I was working in a completely different industry, kind of different, but similar in some ways. And it was also an aesthetic industry. So I was working for a cosmetic company on the sales and education side. And I always had an interest just in beauty in general, whether it be through makeup. I thought plastic surgery was, very interesting and appealing. And so I was working for a company that dissolved, basically. It was going online only. And so I was at kind of a transitional period. And so I just kind of took a gamble, and I knew of a plastic surgeon who was looking for someone. And I reached out, and I knew, I had no experience in that world at that time, but took a gamble. And I absolutely loved it from day one. So it kind of spun off from there. And I'm 17 years in now with plastic surgery, and it's all I know, and I wouldn't do anything else.
So tell me, we'll get into a little bit more of this, but in like one or two sentences, what do you think's changed over the years? 17 years in this business. What do you think has changed from the time that you started until now? Because you're in facial plastics,
Mhm.
plastic surgery. To me, it's all the same. It's surgery.
Right. I think the biggest thing is social media. Social media has made such a huge, huge impact on the plastic surgery world. It's, brought the attention to so many people that otherwise wouldn't know about these procedures. And it really has just boomed ever since, social media became a thing, and it just continues to keep growing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I owned a practice back, I hate to say this, before the turn of the century, right? And then sold it, in 2013. Those listeners who know my story know the reasons, but I don't get into that now. And you know what my social media was? Yellow Pages. $12,000 a month in Yellow Pages. And I think about this now and I cringe. I'm going like, oh my goodness, you know what $12,000 in organic and SEO would do today? But it worked. All right. So one of the things that to me as doesn't really change in any business is a human resource. We can talk about social media all day long. So let's talk about how you lead a strong team, building a team that works well together, and how you keep them motivated during these busy and stressful times, because these are some stressful times that we deal in.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest or most important things, you have to find personalities that are going to mesh well and that are going to work well together. So when I'm interviewing people, I always try to get a good read on personality. Just to find out if there's someone, if they're a loud personality, if they're kind of quiet and shy. And I know, you can't get 10 loud people together. You have to have a balance. And so I think, work experience and all of that plays a factor as well, of course, but you have to find people that work well together. And I feel like that is a game changer. And so I've worked at practices that have 25 people. I've worked at some that have three, and getting a group of women together, it tends to be primarily women. And it's not easy to get women who all will get along well all the time, no cat fights and things like that, talking about each other. And I've managed to do it for quite some time, where I've been able to kind of cultivate people that I know will mesh well together, and it really makes a huge difference if you've got a team behind you that works well together.
Interesting that you say that because I wouldn't. It wouldn't be socially acceptable for me to say that, but you as a woman can say that. And I know because I had 29 females in my former practice and I totally understand it. All right. So, what do you think is more important when you're hiring, getting along with you or getting along with the doctor?
I think getting along with the doctor for sure. I mean, they absolutely have to connect with him, get along with him. It's all about, keeping the doctor happy. So definitely that would be first and foremost.
So, Erica, let's talk about keeping your staff motivated and more importantly, how do you deal with the conflict of a fractured team? I know your team pretty well right now, and there isn't a whole lot of fracture in it, but there's always some kind of conflict. So, let's talk about how you keep them motivated and then how you deal with conflict.
Well, as far as keeping people motivated, donuts always help. But basically, I just really try to give some positive feedback. When I see that people are doing a good job, I do like to point it out. I think oftentimes, in the workplace, it's forgotten about to tell people you appreciate them or good job or you killed it today, whatever the case may be. And that appreciation a little goes a long way, and it really does keep staff motivated and excited to be there. So I think that definitely helps.
When you're referring to you killed it, you're speaking to the team, not to the doctor.
Correct. Yes, definitely.
For
Yeah.
those listening, that was a joke, even if you didn't think it was funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
when we're talking about hiring and retaining great people, you spoke about the mesh and the qualities that you look for. What are the common hiring mistakes that you and I have all made?
I mean, there's many of them. I know we have hired people, not here, but other places I've been, hired people who are inexperienced to get them in at a lower cost. And that sometimes doesn't always pan out. And especially if you're at a fast paced or busier practice, you don't have the time or manpower to be able to dedicate to, really train from the ground up. So that I think is definitely a big one. And there's people, I spoke about people's personalities that don't mesh, but just people who have very strong personalities in general. I kind of try to shy away from. You don't want somebody who's going to come in and try to change everything, call all the shots, upset the doctor, upset the flow. So, and that's another important one. I just think you need to be very careful when hiring and very strategic about it with experience, personality, connecting with the doctor, connecting with the manager, introduce them to the rest of the staff as well. And I am a fan of doing working interviews. I think that's always helpful, just so, people can say whatever they want in the interview, let's face it. A lot of people sell themselves well, but then once they're actually on the job, it's a whole different story. So we've been implementing that, and I definitely think that has helped things tremendously as well. So you can
All
see
right.
see
So
how.
outside of donuts, how do you retain top employees?
So, as far as retaining employees, I just think that, appreciation, of course, goes a long way. I do think doing things such as team outings, making it fun. It needs to be business at the end of the day, but you have to have fun while you're doing it, and that makes people want to continue coming to work and stay there.
Yeah, I can share that. I've known Dr. Rana since fellowship. This is several years out. And who opens up a business during COVID? All right.
Right.
Other than Dr. Rana. And it's amazing because, even though we've had challenges, I'm proud to say that I never expected that he would get to where he is in such a short period of time. And it's always a running joke, all right? The type of employees, the type of management. And, he is one of the more generous physicians that I know. All right.
Absolutely.
And most people like to cheapen on their staff.
Hmm.
And look, you want to retain good staff. Money is an incentive. That's great, all right, when it's for the pay. But when it comes to commissions, when it comes to bonuses, I have to tell you that Dr. Rana, he just doesn't worry about it, and he's willing to pay for good performance and good talent. And he's not when he's not, all
Hmm.
right? Because I believe don't try to buy your employees and your staff who aren't worth it. It never fares well.
Let's take a quick break. From mastering clinical operations to managing financials and leading a team, the role of a practice administrator is both complex and essential, and the right training makes all the difference. At Shore Solutions, our practice administrator training program equips your practice administrator with the skills and knowledge to streamline operations, enhance patient care, and drive practice success. Our immersive 1-week on-site training program dives deep into every critical aspect of practice management, giving your practice administrator the tools to excel. If your practice administrator is new or needs refinement in particular areas, act now and get in line for this one-of-a-kind practice administrator training program. Schedule a free consult with our team to get started today.
So, what do you do when a new hire isn't a good fit? Because you just mentioned that anybody can sell themselves during an interview. I've seen it a million times. But what happens when the rubber meets the road? What do you do?
When it's not a good fit, I really do believe you just have to cut your losses and just part ways. And there was a time when I had a front desk, receptionist, and she just, I mean, was clearly not getting it. And I've never let someone go within a week, but I had no choice. It was so terrible. She was hanging up on everybody, transferring people to the wrong place, not providing good customer service, was borderline rude to people. And when that things like that occur, you got to cut your losses and just, in the words of Dr. Rana, pull the ripcord and just be done. Of course, if somebody has some things you need to work on, you always want to give them a chance to work on things. But if it's not a good fit from the start and you recognize that, I do think it's best to just cut your losses and part ways. I really do.
So, as a manager, I always say when you hire a warm body, you're always going to be taking the heat because all too many times practices hire somebody to fill a void, not to fill the future. And I always hire to fill the future, not to fill a void. So I'm not suggesting that everybody does this, but I always have intentionally overstaffed to leave room for growth. Do you ever think that maybe it's just our fault? That sometimes a new hire doesn't work out. We didn't set the expectation down from the very beginning. We threw them into a job with minimal training. I'm not saying that you do, but in the industry and your professional management experience, do you ever think that we're the problem? And maybe, you hire a new employee and you hear the same thing. Well, at my former place, we did it this way. Well, you're not there anymore. Okay.
Absolutely, 100%. I think that exactly what you said. Sometimes new hires aren't given the proper training, and it could be that people are, stretched too thin. It could be a number of different reasons, but the proper training is if they don't get that, they're not set up for success. And so it's almost a guarantee they're going to fail. And especially an experienced person coming from somewhere else who is used to doing something a certain way. In every practice, it can be, it can all be facial plastic surgeons, they can all be body plastic surgeons, whatever the case may be, and do things entirely differently. So you have to learn, each practice's way, and it's up to the practice manager, the OR director, the staff to get people trained. And if they're not properly trained, it's 100%, yeah, it'd be my fault.
Well, Erica, do you ever think that beyond the knowledge that we try to train an employee, do you ever think that maybe we just don't give them the proper tools? Let me give you an example. We don't have the proper social media set up already if we're hiring a marketing manager. We don't have a great phone system. We don't have a great EMR. I call it quote unquote, try to cheapen out. All right. And you go with low rent photography systems and you go with low rent EMRs, and we're setting them up for failure from the very beginning to get their job. We don't have a proper CRM system.
Yeah, I definitely think you do have to set them up with all of the proper tools in regards to pretty much every aspect of the office. But it's a failure on the practice if those things aren't in place prior to hiring somebody. But it's not fair to, if we were to hire, a social media marketing person and things are in disarray and we don't give them a clear expectation of what our plan is, what we're wanting, and they're not going to know what to do with anything. And so when they don't meet our expectations, it's our fault for not being clear with those expectations on the front end.
All right, so let's talk about the patient experience in relationships, because at the end of the day, it's all about the patient.
Mhm.
I always made a joke, if it wasn't for the patients, I'd get a lot of work done.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
how do people shape the patient experience? Because isn't that like one of the most important things? If a patient doesn't have a good experience, guess what? They're not coming back.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, that is extremely important. And I really, really appreciate that about Dr. Rana. He is very big on instilling the values to every team member that from the moment a patient walks in the door, they need to feel like family. So from the second they walk in the door, it's, would you like some coffee? Would you like some water? They'll come in. We will, talk to them more than just a patient. It's not just handing them paperwork. Here, we'll get you back. Okay, Dr. Rana's coming in the room. It's never, ever like that. You want to be warm, friendly, have a smile on your face all the time, and they just want to feel welcome. And we really, really strive hard for that. And I think we do a pretty good job of that, and patients comment on it all the time. And I think they love, love, love that. And that can set you apart from other practices.
Great. So, what could practices do better when it comes to patient relationships?
I think sometimes just slowing down a little bit. I think, everybody's in a huge rush to get the patient roomed, then get the doctor in, get them out, get the next patient back. And I think if they just slow down just a little bit and take the time to just have, a small conversation with the patient, it makes all the difference in the world.
You know, I've always had a theory, and I'm a patient at many practices, all right? Whether it's my family practice or whether it's my aesthetic cosmetic, to get my neurotoxin, whatever, I'm still a patient.
Right.
The hardest thing is nobody likes to wait. All right. So, and you don't want to get somebody back in the room and then just come in and do the procedure and have them leave. We want to engage that patient. We want them to feel, like you said, family. That's really important because we want them to keep coming back for more. What role do you believe the actual facility plays? Because I was blown away when I came to visit your brand new office in December. It is absolutely beautiful. Now, true, it's brand new,
Hmm.
but I know the Rana family, and 10 years from now, it's still going to look brand new. All right.
Right.
What role do you think the employees take in keeping that brand new facility for the patient engagement? You think that that has a lot to do with it?
Definitely. I think, everybody has to work hard at keeping things clean, tidy, looking brand new. You want it warm, inviting, and you want things in their place. You don't want a huge mess, and you want things organized. And there's nice little touches throughout that make it feel like family. Dr. Rana's got some pictures of his new baby in the rooms, the exam rooms. Patients love that. But yeah, the employees definitely play a part in keeping things looking exactly as they should. And you don't want boxes laying around. You don't want trash, mud streaked throughout the place, all sorts of things. And it's a constant battle, I will say, to keep things tidy. But I do think it definitely is important to make sure things look super presentable, that rooms are always stocked, organized, you're not fumbling for things. All of those things make a big difference.
I've always said that your office and your exam rooms at 3 and 4 o'clock should look like they do at 8 and 9 o'clock.
Yes,
There has to be
absolutely.
somebody constantly going around and making sure you don't have copy paper boxes, the delivery from the vendors that they came in and dropped off the medical supplies aren't just hanging out. It looks kind of unkempt. And then as we wrap things up, what doctors and owners should know: if a provider is struggling with staff turnover or team morale, where should they start?
I do think a lot of it starts with just speaking to the staff, talking to them and finding out what seems to be going on. Just go directly to the source. And I like to talk to people two different ways. I talk to them separately first and then kind of as a group later. But I do like to get everyone's feedback just to find out, what's going on. If team morale seems down, tell me. What is it? Something with you and another employee member? Is it something with the schedule? Myself, the doctor? What could it possibly be? Getting to the root of the problem. And I just think that having clear communication really makes team members feel heard. They want to know that they are understood. You're hearing what their concerns are. And so I think communication and listening is huge. And then coming up with a solution and a plan to rectify the problem and figure out what you can do to make things better. And then meeting with the entire team to make sure everybody's on the same page, because chances are sometimes if it's, an issue with one person, it could be same issue with a lot of people there. So you want to make sure that they know that it's an open door policy. They can come to you with concerns, but if they don't come to me, I will go to them, because I want to nip it in the bud and figure out what we can do to resolve it, move on, and move in a more positive direction.
All right. So, since this is a practice manager podcast, I already know the answer to the question I'm going to ask. I already know, all right, how often you meet with the doctor. So, how often should a practice manager meet with the doctor?
I think if time allows for it, every day, at least once a day, truly. So I know for myself, it's multiple times a day, every day, but I think at minimum, at least once a day. Pretty much anywhere I've worked, it's a minimum of once a day. You're meeting with the doctor. There's always things to communicate. And so you want to, especially if time's limited, you want to kind of have everything condensed, ready to go, and just go through the bullet points of, XYZ. These are all the things we need to cross off the list, and then start a new day, fresh the following day. But I, at the end of each day, send Dr. Rana an email with basically all the happenings of the office throughout the day. And so he is in the loop. There may be, something that I miss as I'm telling him at the end of the day, or when we touch base at some point. And so as I go throughout my day, I just add to this list of everything that's happened. That way he knows everything that's going on, and it'll be a reminder for us to touch base, the following day or whenever on any issues. But communication is key, because they're going to be in surgery, they're going to be seeing patients, so they can be out of the loop. So it's basically your job to make sure they're in the loop and they know everything that's going on.
We know that things don't happen the way we want them to every day. And, we try to report back to the doctor things that happen, whether they were beyond our control or not beyond our control. What should we do when something happens, to prevent it from happening again?
You definitely want to address it immediately, first and foremost. And whether you're grabbing an employee or handling a situation yourself, you want to make sure it's getting taken care of immediately. You also want to make sure that other team members are aware of what a mistake was, so they're not going and making the same mistake also. We try to, when a mistake happens, create protocols if they aren't already in place, and create new protocols to basically prevent these same mistakes from happening. So we're, growing practice, and we're hiring new people, and changing procedures and things, just how we do things, just as we're adapting to scale basically. And there's always going to be changes. So we have to adapt accordingly. And there's definitely plenty of mistakes that happen along the way, more than I'd like, but it can happen, but you definitely want to address it immediately, create policies or protocols that need to be in place if they aren't already. Make sure the entire team is aware so they're not making the mistake. And if it's something that's more serious, you may need to follow up with that team member and have a set plan. We're going to speak on this again in 2 weeks to see if something has improved, and just always have a next step planned.
You communicate that back to the doctor or business owner.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of it, of course, goes in my email, but on things that are, going wrong, or something, a mistake or something that's of importance, it definitely needs to be brought up to him. So I try to bring it up real time. It's not always doable real time, but just as soon as he has a moment to bring it up, then bring it up, and just rip off the Band-Aid. You got to just, say whatever happened and figure out, come up with a solution. I try to, when I present a problem, have some sort of solution behind it, but it may not always be the solution that he wants. And so you got to adapt, roll with it. And at the end of the day, it's always going to be, the physician's practice. So you have to go with what they think is best for their practice and adapt and change accordingly.
All right, so final two questions. As a seasoned practice manager, what advice would you give to another practice manager or somebody that wants to become a practice manager? Give me two pearls of yours that just have gotten in your crawl that you think, I'm not going to say you've mastered, because I don't ever think we master anything in life. There's always room for improvement. What advice would you give to a practice manager? And then lastly, what advice would you give to a practice owner about managing people? Because I don't know one doctor that was taught that in medical school.
Right.
I teach doctors. I'm on faculty at a major university here in South Florida. I have to tell you, I have a lot of doctors in my classes, and I have a lot of future doctors in my classes. I'm the only bit of information that they get.
For a practice manager, I would tell them a few different things. I would say always do your best to keep the team motivated, because if you have a motivated team, they're going to be hardworking, happy. They will adapt to whatever it is you need. And secondly, it's not your practice, it's the doctor's practice. So you always need to follow their lead, go with their direction, and pass along the message to the team.
But
And
should you treat the practice like it's your practice?
I think that you should treat it like it's your own practice. You want to be respectful of it, mindful of it, and you want to act as though it's your own, and you want to do your best as if it's your own business.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't, you won't be in that business.
Right.
Because let's be honest, the practice owner, whether it's the doctor or anybody else, wants to feel like they have somebody in that position that's going to treat it like it's theirs. I share with you that when I have conversations with Dr. Rana, and things aren't always perfect in any business, even in my own, but I want my staff to treat this like it's their own business, and things will go wrong, and it's okay. All right. Look, the front and foremost, it is the safety of the patient and safety of the team, bar none. And as long as we don't compromise that, everything is fixable.
Right.
All right. So, in conclusion, Erica Vega, I really want to thank you for spending a part of your day representing Dr. Nick Rana, board certified facial plastic surgeon in Frisco, North Dallas, Texas. And I would like to take a shout out to Dr. Rana for allowing you to become part of our team today and part of episode number 129 from Shore Solutions, the podcast. Good luck and God bless. Don't go anywhere just yet. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the latest insights. New episodes are released every 2 weeks. For more valuable information and resources to elevate your practice, sign up for our e-newsletter. You'll get the latest industry updates, expert tips, and exclusive strategies straight to your inbox. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at Shorr Solutions. If you're ready to take your practice to the next level, schedule a free consult with our team today. Thank you for joining us on Shorr Solutions, the podcast.